So summer is long gone and it's long behind us now. We are now right in the middle of autumn. And if you've grown tomatoes this year, the chances are you're going to have quite a lot of green ones left through September, October, November, and possibly even into December. If you live in a mild region like we do, we live in the UK, so we get really mild winters. So it's not unusual to still have tomatoes on our vines green in December. Like we are supposed to be reaching 16, 17, possibly even 18 degrees Celsius next week, quite a few parts of the UK. So that's quite extraordinary, really, for the middle of November. It just goes to show how mild it really is. So I'm going to be talking about a couple of things in this video. One, I'm going to be talking about how to ripen these green tomatoes at home. It's really easy, anyone can do it, and there's no complicated processes involved. And two, I'm going to be talking about the results of my horse manure grown tomatoes, which I planted just as an experiment to see how they did, just in horse manure and nothing else, to see what happens. So keep watching to see that. So right here we have tomatoes, the last of them which I've picked now and I've left to ripen in the greenhouse. We have a basket here full of ones that I grew in the horse manure, and then just other ones here which I've been growing in the greenhouse. I do have a few more at home that are ripened. So there are a few different ways that you can ripen green tomatoes off the vine. You can leave them in your greenhouse at the end of the season where it's going to be warm and just leave them on the side, and they'll ripen on their own because tomatoes ripen from the inside out, and as soon as that ripening process starts in the center of the tomato, it can only ripen from inwards outwards from there onwards. So leaving it on the side, it will continue ripening just on its own. You can also leave a couple of tomatoes with your green tomatoes, and they will release ethylene gas and help the other ones ripen as well. Ethylene gas is a chemical that tomatoes release, which promotes ripening. Alternatively, you can just ripen these at home, but the most important thing is that the environment which you're ripening them in is warm. You can't put them in your fridge and expect them to ripen because it just won't work, and they'll just stay green and probably just go bad, to be honest. So if you are going to ripen them at home, the best thing to do is to put them in something such as a paper bag or your kitchen drawer or a cardboard box or something like that, and put with the tomatoes a banana or an apple, because these release quite a lot of the ethylene gas which is required for the ripening of tomatoes. Now, it's also important to make sure that there's no disease on your tomatoes. I had a couple of tomatoes that had some blight on them, and if you've got a box full of unripe tomatoes you're trying to ripen and you've got one blight infected tomato, that's all it takes, one tomato, it'll just quickly spread throughout the entire box and ruin them all. And trust me, I learned the hard way. I've done that and it was a disaster. So make sure that your tomatoes don't have any diseased ones mixed in there as well. Now they'll last for quite a long time off the vine as well. Once they're as long as they're not ripe, they can last for many weeks at an ambient temperature, and they'll just until they're ripe anyway. Once they're ripe, then they'll start to go bad after about a week. So yeah, don't worry about your tomatoes spoiling, as long as there's no disease material on there though. So it is actually warmth and ethylene gas that is responsible for the ripening of tomatoes, and it's a common misconception that sunlight is responsible for the ripening of tomatoes. Now it does help, but obviously tomato plants, like any other plant, need sunlight to grow, but the sunlight hitting the tomatoes is not actually responsible for it. And if anything, it'll actually cause the tomatoes to be sun scalded. So it's not a good idea to have sunlight constantly beaming on your tomatoes. And I think it's especially important that you do ripen them at home if it is later on in the season, like now, November time. There's not really that much warmth in the greenhouse to speed up the ripening process. So ripening them at home is probably the best idea where it's going to be warmer. So to conclude, ripening tomatoes off the vine, September, October time, when it's a little bit warmer in your greenhouse, leave them on the side. Maybe you could stick a banana or an apple in there as well to help things along, or stick another couple of ripe tomatoes in there to give them a helping hand as well. And then once temperatures start to drop a little bit and the strength of the sun starts to decrease, bring them out of your greenhouse, take them home, stick them in a box, a paper bag, a drawer or something like that with an apple or a banana, and after a week or two they'll be ripe, and then you can enjoy them then. Okay, now we have the tomato ripening out the way. We're going to head outside now and we're going to talk about the rather controversial horse manure experiment where I grew tomatoes in horse manure. So let's get on with that. So here we are outside in my experimental horse manure bed. I have stuck nothing else in this besides horse manure. I piled a load of it in here a couple of years ago, and then I piled another load of horse manure on here last winter, and it's now rotted down, and it's a really nice, fluffy, dark, humus-rich material. It's really nice, and I've done nothing special here. I just stuck a old pallet here and hammered some mesh to it to use it as a trellis. And this year I grew a squash on one side and then a couple of tomatoes, which I just had spare on the other side. I just threw them in just to see how they would do. Now, last year I grew a giant pumpkin in this bed. I just stuck one in here and I got quite a big pumpkin actually. Considering I didn't actually put any effort into growing it, I just left it and let it do its own thing. But this year, with the tomatoes, I was quite surprised to find that I actually got just as many, if not more, tomatoes outside in this horse manure bed than I did inside my greenhouse in just general compost. So a lot of people I've seen when I've searched on Google and various areas, they all say that horse manure should not be given to fruiting plants such as tomatoes, but also stuff like aubergines, peppers, and things like that. And from my results here, I can quite clearly say personally that it doesn't really make any difference, because once horse manure breaks down, it basically just becomes compost, just like you would buy from the supermarket anyway. And you would plant a tomato or a pepper just in compost on its own and it would do just fine. So I don't see the problem in doing this, so long as the horse manure is broken down first. Of course, you can't just plant something in it when it's fresh, because it'll have a lot of urine in it and it'll be quite hot. It'll give the plants nitrogen burn because there will be too much nitrogen in it. But once it's broken down and the nitrogen and the carbon have reacted together and it's broken down, it won't be so rich in nitrogen. And actually, it's got quite a lot of nutrients in it, such as phosphorus, potassium, and things like that, as well as quite a lot of nitrogen. But it's also got these nutrients that are needed for fruit development as well. So, will you be using horse manure for your tomatoes next year? It's worth a go if you can get hold of some horse manure. I mean, it's only going to be compost when it's broken down anyway. So, you know, we're always looking for ways to reduce the costs of gardening. And I think if you can get hold of some horse manure, that's a really great way of doing it. And I hope I helped provide some useful information on how you should ripen your green tomatoes. So if you like the video, then hit that like button so YouTube can suggest this content to other people as well. And don't forget to subscribe so you can see when I upload new content just like this one. So stay tuned for the next video, where next week I'm going to be making leaf mold. I'm going to be showing you how to do it and the benefits of using it in your garden. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.